Alright folks, so last night I attempted to do a live stream for Star Citizen 3.1.4 and it failed miserably, not because of my equipment or anything like that, but because the game performance was so horrible. Now right now, you can see at the top right, I'm getting about 35 FPS with some higher climbs up to the 40s and some dips into the high 20s. I haven't left my bed yet, and that's for a reason. I wanted to see where my FPS would kind of land and what would happen. Now, last night I was getting anywhere from 19 to 23 FPS on average, in that range. I tried between the EU servers and the US servers, and my performance did not change. It started that bad, it remained that bad, and it just got worse throughout the evening. I played for about half an hour. I tried to do some dogfighting to test ESP out, but the micro stutters made it so bad I couldn't really control my ship. I had an issue where I got locked into focus mode, which was very odd. So if I hold F right now, it puts me in focus mode, which allows me to have the mouse to open the doors, like inner thought type stuff. Like I can push my mouse and go, I want to push this button. That's kind of the inner thought system or focus mode, this right here. This was on by default, so in order to take it off, I had to push and hold F to remove that so I could move normally. Well, I was able to do that for a little while, but when I tried to fly, it didn't work. Now that's just some random glitch. I don't hold that against the game. But the ESP and flight model that I tried to fly with, I really couldn't give it a good test and showcase it because, well, the lag was so bad. At one point, I was on my Dragonfly down at Terra Mills, which, where's my Dragonfly? Okay, it's destroyed, that's good. Yeah, let's get that back. I was flying it around testing the new maglev system, and I must admit it was fantastic. What little I got to actually experience of it, because I had so many stutters. I once lagged out for 45 seconds straight. And if you were trying to look at the stream, it was down, it was up, it was down, it was up, hey, but none of it was positive because it kept crashing so long, so frequently that it was impossible to play. And then I was flying along, it lagged out so bad, and when I came back, my ship had blown up. But I hadn't hit anything. I was flying well above the surface in SCM mode, so. Now, I'd flown down there in my Super Hornet because of the failed attempt at dogfighting and all that stuff to see how ESP worked. And I'm going to need to get some money. Anyway, I'd been trying to test that, and it was just so appalling. I couldn't really feel things that I kind of gave up and moved on. So I am going to, you can see the stutters now. My FPS just dipped into the 20s, and I'm barely in the 30s. Nope, another micro stutter, another micro stutter, another micro stutter. Oh, lag out. Audio just cut out, so we are hard frozen. There's the audio coming back. So at least I know I'm not frozen, but the game is completely lagged out. Alright, let's wait for it to recover here. Still waiting, should be another moment. There we go. And now we're back in and fine. You can see the FPS though is now in the mid-20s. Slowly getting into the 30s there. Let's load up ARC's control for my Logitech and see what my CPU is doing right now. So again, I have a 5820K at 4 gigahertz. I have 32 gigs of RAM. The game is loading off an 850 EVO SSD. I have a 1080 Ti at 2050 megahertz. So right now my GPU memory, 1080 Ti, has 12 gigs of GPU memory. It's only running at 1759 megahertz, so it's not even being pushed. I'm at 33% GPU usage, 60% memory usage on the GPU. The frame buffer is at only 9%, so there's not a lot queued up. If I look at my CPU, I am pushing 48 to 58 right now. There are 3 cores that are actually kind of higher, and the rest are middle range and lower. But it's not really being pushed very hard. Sadly, ArcStock doesn't read the actual overclock applied. But if I just start to run around here again, which is where we got those stutters, I'm looking here. What I saw was a massive spike in the frame buffer from 8 to 9% to 100% for a second, and then it dropped down. 20% on the frame buffer, back down. When I look at the GPU or CPU usage, it doesn't change. I'm still in the 50s. One specific thread will jump up from green, meaning under 50% usage, to yellow, which is 50 and above, to orange, to red, and then back down, but never pegging that one thread at 100%. So, what is causing my horrible spikes? Their GPU usage just spiked to 100% and then back down to 30%, 28%. So the server is trying to stream data to my system in order to render what's going on and position me within the system. And when that happens, it dumps a ton of data at once to the system, which causes the lag out. That's my summation here, because I'm only using 54% of my system RAM, which is, again, 32 gigs. I'm using 17.2 right now. So it's not my system that's causing these horrible micro stutters. At times, they may result from my CPU getting pegged, but why is my CPU getting pegged randomly? Because the game's not sending information to it in a proper streaming fashion. It's trying to dump it all on it, and then it backs off, dumps it all on it, and then it backs off. It's kind of like when you're trying to watch a YouTube video and you don't have a good enough connection. You can't pull down enough data to buffer the video ahead of where you actually are, so you get a lot of holdouts while the system tries to buffer the video. That's what this lag feels like to me. I will accept that my PC is not exactly brand new, but my PC is not exactly a slouch. The CPU is perfectly acceptable. The GPU is, well, top of the line right now. I have plenty of RAM and it's running off of a very good SSD. So the culprit for these lag outs and stutters and performance issues is still the server. Now, I don't know what they changed between 3.1.3 and 3.1.4. I'm not aware of any major performance tweaks that they did. Now, to be completely honest, I have not read the entire changelog yet, but I've been very frequently perusing Spectrum, watching Noobify, Board Gamer, and some of the other major YouTube channels, and there's not really been a massive talk on this update's going to have a ton of performance changes. No, it's about hover mode and IFCS and ESP. Those are the core focuses, so I'm sure they made some minor tweaks and adjustments, but those minor tweaks broke it for me. Now, everybody's performance will vary because not everybody has the same PC. I'm sure if you found somebody with the exact same configuration of a computer that I have, they would probably be in a similar boat to me. But other folks with 8th gen i7s or Ryzen CPUs, they might not be affected by this same issue that I am in this version. I know that in version 3.1.2 and 3.1.3, a lot of people were complaining that the game was unplayable for them. It was perfectly fine for me. So it's just a lot of the optimizations haven't been put in, but it's just surprising that patch to patch within a release, they've changed the performance so much that it broke it for me. And I wanted to highlight that because, again, I am walking around Olazar where there's usually a lot of people and a lot of activity. But if you remember back in 3.1.3 and earlier even with 3, I was getting anywhere from 40 to 60 FPS right now. I'm down to 29 to 30 on average, which is still better than it used to be back in version 2. But at least in version 2, it was typically a stable 23 FPS. I can live with stable. It's the constant changing in spikes that are killing it for me. So, let's see if my Super Hornet's ready. Alright, so if I expedite it now, I should get the Hornet immediately. Yep, there we go. Now I'll pay for it. Stored. Retrieve it. Now, the reason I'm pulling the Super Hornet out versus the regular Hornet is because the system is so broken, at least performance-wise, that I want to make sure I have enough firepower to actually try and show off ESP. The big issue is that the lag outs are going to make it very hard for me to discern between actual performance problems and what ESP is doing to me. But I know enough about what they've changed that I can speak to that, which is what I tried to do in the live stream yesterday. So what ESP is trying to do is it's trying to smooth out your motions as you get in to target your opponents. The IFCS changes, or the flight control system, tweak how your ships handle in space. So I'll show you a little bit when we get in it, but I'm finding that I'm blowing through my fuel a lot faster than I ever was before. Hello, buddy. And gun's still not attached. That's always good. Because I'm burning through a lot of fuel, it's changing the way the ship is managing its thrusters to make it more like a plane flying through an atmosphere, which doesn't feel right for space. There should be some drift because it takes time for inertia to change with the thrusters. Unless you're full powering a thruster in a direction, it shouldn't do that. And you saw what happened right there. in the IFCS and ESP system, your motions are stored until such time as the system gets unlocked. So if you remember back in previous streams and videos, when I would come out of quantum travel, my ship would bob all over the place. That's because my mouse wasn't perfectly centered in the middle of my screen, and those inputs were being stored so that once I came out of quantum travel, the ship would bob all over the place. You can see now I can't make my ship pull up and off the ground. I'm stuck until I actually thrust away. But because the mouse wasn't centered, the inputs were stored and then amplified when I popped in, and boom, suddenly my nose shot way up, which can lead to some very dangerous situations when you initially take off. Alright, so let me thrust away. I'm going to fly in a straight direction, so I'm going to push Z, which makes free look mode on, which means I'm going in a straight direction. I turn it off and get my mouse back. You can see my mouse drifts around, which is fine, and then it eventually kind of gets close to centered. But as my head bobs and the ship moves as it impacts whatever's going on in space, it moves around. So if I start to move, not much. Oh, wait. Look at my speed now. And you saw that I started to get a red out there, now blackout, now a bit of a reddish hue, now blackout, now reddish hue. And you can see I'm going really slow and changing direction. And you hear my thrusters a lot more. My guy's breathing, trying to keep the blood from going to his head or back into his head. That's part of what's going on with the flight change models. So they're trying to make it so that when you turn, the ship is thrusting hard to make it more like you're flying in an atmosphere, so that when you complete your turn, you're headed in the opposite direction. You see? Normally, if I spin around really quickly, at least in the old flight control system, it would take a moment and my ship would drift. I would counter this with side thrust, rotation, using a heavy reverse thrust. So if I turn around really fast, you can see I didn't actually stop because the way the thrusters are keeping me going. In the old system, you would see that number go negative, and I did that a few times when I came into a planet too hot. I would turn my ship around, thrust all the way, fire my afterburners to try and slow myself down and go in the other direction. But now I can't flip around and do that. It won't go below a certain minimum no matter how fast I spin the ship around. Now, maybe if I made my mouse a lot more sensitive, I could make it happen, but I can't play with that sensitive of a mouse. But you can see I'm blacking out a whole lot more than I used to, as well as a red out, because the thrusters are constantly running, and I don't find that very realistic. I'm in space. Now, I understand the concept there, and that makes it a lot more easy to fly, but if I'm in a dogfight, I should have a way to enable and disable that type of a thrusting system. So when I was in a dogfight yesterday, flying around using various thrusts, using afterburners here and there to move around, I ended up burning through, I'm at 100 on fuel right now, which is this part right here. That's my thruster fuel and all that. I burned it down to 88 in a dogfight with 3 ships that lasted all of 5 minutes, if that. Normally, I'd maybe be at 95-ish. So I'm burning through more fuel because the thrusters are constantly being forced to run on top of my needs for afterburners. And I didn't find it very good. It made dogfighting very difficult. And I can't find anybody here. See, missions are all borked again as well because I can't seem to get any missions for bounty hunting. So I'm just going to fly somewhere and hope we find some pirates in space that we can try to fight to take a look at what I mean by the ESP. And let's make sure I still have the system enabled, because I think I got annoyed and turned it off. ESP, yeah, I turned it off. Alright, let's turn that back on. Well, we quantum over to Cry Astro, which is up here. Alright, and you see the ship's bobbing and weaving so much because the thrusters are constantly trying to take my minute mouse input and translate it to ship movement. Before, there was a little bit of slide where I could move the mouse into a small dead zone, typically within that central momentum reticle or inertial reticle, and it would allow me to at least move my mouse a moment without completely freaking the ship out. But as you can imagine now, when I'm trying to line up with another person, my ship's moving around and everything's going all over the place. I don't get motion sickness, but somebody who does is going to hurl all over their screen with the constant bobbing and weaving, and it's just terrible. Alright, so quick check on the system. GPU's at 74% memory usage, 31% overall usage, still back in the 20s now. CPU, 3640. I didn't even touch my mouse for all of quantum travel, and you see it turned me because my mouse was not centered. I have to keep using Z to ensure that my ship goes straight, which is not a good thing for me because then I'm potentially not in control of my ship when I need to be. All right, so CPU, I'm at 32, 36, 35, 40, 41, 33. That's percentage of overall usage on it. Now I have the 5820K, that's a hex core CPU with 12 threads due to hyperthreading. RAM, 17.78 gigs of RAM used, so I have plenty of resources across the board to dedicate to the game, and I'm still getting all those micro stutters. Alright, so there's nobody here. Let's go down to selling. See if anybody's over here, and you can see I just forgot I didn't have control of my ship. I just need to find a pirate in the orbit of a planet or something, and we'll fight. If I don't find one, I'll pause it, go find one and do it. Now you can see my mouse is off-centered, so watch what happens when I come out of quantum travel here in a moment. It takes a moment to disengage quantum travel and re-engage the SCM mode. When it does, my ship should freak out and shoot off to the left.
Quantum drive is now
okay, even though my mouse is to the left, it thrusted me off to the right. Not exactly the way it should go. OM3... Nothing there. And you just saw I had a red out. Alright, so I'm going to pause it. And I'm going to find us a couple of pirates here so that we can have a bit of a fight and we can talk a little bit about ESP and see how that actually is working in the game. So we'll see in a minute when we find a target. Alright, so I've been flying around Yila here for a minute trying to find somebody, but I wanted to talk about something else real quick that I forgot about here in the asteroid belt. Okay, well there's one thing I wanted to talk about. I don't know what I hit, but I just blew up on something, so yay! But the asteroids, as you can see, I don't know if you could see it really properly there, but they don't render very well anymore in this version, so they look like they're constantly phase shifting, or like I've got artifacts on my GPU and they're sliding through space. Everything's pixelated and looks like if you shine like a laser pointer at the wall, how you can kind of see the light emitting off of it and the photons moving around because it's so intense. That's what the asteroids look like now around Yila, and it is really painful to see. It is not a good thing. I don't know what I flew into because there wasn't anything in front of me. I'll have to check the replay on that. If I randomly blew up in an asteroid field, that's very annoying. Maybe one of those asteroids I saw was phase shifting and it didn't look as close as it was. Now, if I sound like I'm ragging on the game, it's because I am. I really do not like 3.1.4. I paid a lot of money to get my ship back multiple times now, and I still can't get it back. So, yeah, it's getting really annoying to have to fight the game to play and fly my ship. I don't like it. I want to be able to go back and fly these things. I know it's an alpha and they're developing things, but really, I saw on Spectrum that the version right before launch to the Persistent Universe was pretty well regarded by a lot of folks, and they seemed to think it was a good version. So I'm not sure what the heck happened. What'd they do? Why did they change everything to the point where it's all broken now? And it just makes it very difficult to get in and be excited about playing it. Alright, B2. I can't really fight in the 315 very well because it's not a fighter, it's an exploration ship. But I should be able to at least get somewhere, hopefully, and maybe talk about something positive for a minute. What I was going to say prior to the asteroid incident, whatever happened out at Yila, was I noticed, if you remember back in the last few videos I did of 3.1.3, I was talking about how nice it is for some of these ships that have massive engines like this one, you're still standing there, to be able to fly out very quickly because their afterburners work very efficiently. Wrong ship. Man, performance. So the ship can get up to speed very fast and you can get moving, such as this ship, which was touted as having a massive engine, and even my Super Hornet, which has a big engine and can move very quickly. You used to be able to get up to maximum afterburner speed fairly quickly. It felt a little fast, but now they've chopped that almost by 2/3 to the point where it takes a while to get up to maximum speed now. Just another one of those changes that I'm not really sure why they made it. Get in the seat. We'll see how the 315 goes. I have not flown this one yet in 3.1.4. Lag. Flight ready.
Origin shellports at your service. Core system operational. Landing gear raised.
Red out. I didn't shoot, so why did a gun, or whatever that was, just shoot? I raised my landing gear a while ago, and I'm just now getting the sounds for it. Yeah, this ship's going to be even more touchy. Alright, so... depressing, but I do want to go back out there, so let's go back to Yila. Where are you? Over here. And we'll hopefully make it this time. My inertial thing's shooting off to the side. Let's see if I can bring it back in a little bit. So you can see the crosshairs moving around. That's the stored power. So I bet you if I have it way off over there, when I get back in here, my ship's going to blast off. I'll probably crash into an asteroid. If I do, I will have to record different. Oh, good. No asteroids here yet. Let's see what happens. Come off, and boom. Right where I said, and look at that. We're almost pointed behind us. Stored momentum. Fantastic. All right. Now, which one of these is the one that I can spawn the land ships at? I think it's the mining area. Terra Divide, shelter, no. Shelter, no. Shelter, no. Benson Mining Outpost, I think that might be it. But it's on the dark side, and I really don't want to go to the dark side. Alright, let's see if we can go back to selling. I don't want to waste the time right now trying to find something. I want to just get to something. This video is not about the fun of exploration and seeing what's out there. This video is talking about the problems that exist in 3.1.4.
Quantum drive engaged.
Alright, so let me see if I can fix that and see if I can get it to cancel out. Alright, so not quite. Down a bit, left a bit. Right there. Alright, so we should just slightly go down to the left when we pop out here. Since I've got it all balanced now. Let's see what happens. Where are we going? Where are we going? Just a bit to the left and down.
Quantum drive disengaged.
Yep, just a little bit to the left and down. So you can balance it out. You just can't. That seems so dumb. Alright, let's go to OM4. Oh, wait.
Quantum drive engaged.
There we go. I'm on a North American server, or US server, and that just took me how long to get that set up? Oh crap, we're gonna zip way down to the bottom. Get back up here.
Quantum drive disengaged.
Alright. There, Mills Hydro Farm.
Quantum
There
drive
we go, locked
engaged.
on. So when it locks on, it's aiming your ship at your target. If you hit Z to disengage the mouse and engage free look, then you will stay locked onto your target and you won't have that stored kinetic energy crap.
Quantum drive disengaged.
If you catch it in time, you can fix it, but yeah. Alright, Terra Mills mining facility, right there. That's not what I wanted. That's the mining facility. I wanted the hydroponics, which is where I can't see. There we go, 200 that way. Alright, so let's see if we can get lined up at a decent area, and we'll go full speed. So this ship still has a pretty good acceleration, but you notice how slow it is compared to before? I would have already been at my max speed by now, and I'm still chugging along. Now this doesn't seem like a bad thing. It seems like it's going pretty quick, and it's getting up there all right. It's just quite a drastic change from the last model where I would have been there quite a while ago. Alright, let's rock it down there. We'll speed some of this up through the magic of editing so you don't have to watch how long it takes. So I'm finishing my approach now, and as you can see, I'm just minorly drifting the mouse around the central reticle, and just the minute amount of movement causes the whole ship to start moving, which takes you in and out of Afterburner, which is brutal. They need to revert that back a little bit. Freelancer down there. He's heading out with some cargo, doing a cargo run. I don't know if you noticed it either, but when I was panning around the ship, I had a ton of micro stutters, and my performance was terrible, and it still is. I'm down to 20 FPS, 19, 18. That is appalling. 17, 16 FPS, 15 FPS. My GPU memory is at 80% now, but GPU usage is at 18%. CPU is at 20%, 35, 39, 37, 32, 28, 38. The draw distances seem to have gone down a bit. I just barely started seeing that render in, which caused a spike of CPU to 60% for a moment. GPU just jumped to 75% to render in the buildings, and then it dropped right back down to 24 because, again, things are coming from the servers that can't handle it. But look at that performance. 16 FPS and then back up. It's just insane. That's what's killing a lot of the fun for this, because you can't properly control anything. Alright, let's drop the gear. Now I can't land on the pad or they will despawn my ship and then I'm totally stranded here. Which is okay because I'll die anyway. So I'm going to land over here a bit. Hey, I compressed my gear and then it went through the ground. Alright, let's power the ship off to reduce my energy signature. 18 FPS, 16 FPS. Oh, it's a slideshow. 13 with the micro stutter, 13 with the micro stutter. 16 FPS. This is worse than version 2.3. Lag out to 5 FPS. It's a freaking slideshow. Animation's not fixed, but that's okay. But look at it. It's terrible. It's hard to really see anything. Once you stable for a minute, things start to come back in, but oh my gosh. This is probably going to be a very bad idea, but we'll see what happens. Alright, now if you remember the exploration I did of the Javelin with my Dragonfly, the ship's supposed to just be kind of landed when it's not on. But unfortunately, it slowly ticks and climbs and climbs and climbs until you turn the engine on. So if you don't get to it in time, you're going to end up being very airborne. And you won't be able to get on your ship. And if you wait probably 20 minutes, it'll be pretty close to orbit. Now, when I first started doing planetary stuff, the performance on the surface was pretty poor, to be honest. But it's the first time they'd implemented planets, so okay, I can understand that. But this is a ways on, and they just totally trashed it. I think I'm one version behind on my NVIDIA drivers, which I will try to update. You can see the ship bouncing and rotating as it's starting to climb up. It's already ridiculously high. But let's get on it. It will bounce around some more. Let's do flight ready. Okay, so at least the FPS balanced out a little bit. Now, one thing that I hate about this is the fact that if you look at the front of the ship, it's like I'm leaning to the right. My head's not centered. I don't know many people who drive with their head in the Taco Bell mode, if you remember the old 90s commercials. But this is confusing. And the reticle that's on front shows that's my angle of attack right there. Let's pop out. And that's not exactly true because I'm hovering mostly level here. Let's pan down. Okay, so it is a little true. The back is up a little higher than the front, which doesn't make a lot of sense. It's supposed to be a maglev, and I should be fairly equal here. But you can see I'm pointed at the ground. I should be pointed somewhere about there to be smooth, and this should be centered with the on-helmet HUD. Those differences make it a little distracting and confusing because things aren't lined up when they should be. So let's start to move, which is good, and you can see that the ship starts to hover a little bit. They're going to have to work on telling the computer to shut up. But as you start to drive, the system is scanning ahead on the ground, looking for obstacles and things to lift you up and over them. It's actually trying to hover. So if I aim at these rocks, if you compare to the last video I did, I would have probably crashed into those. But you can see the ship thrust itself up to go over them, and when it came back down, instead of slamming into the ground, it used enough counter thrust to keep me airborne. Now I'm in hover mode. You can see that on the HUD.
Port impact warning.
Whee!
Front impact warning.
My max speed is 40 meters a second in hover mode. So let's turn and go over here.
Front impact
Those
warning.
alerts get very annoying because they don't ever stop. We will ride a geyser. And you can see when we come back down, it's not too shabby. Occasionally, like that, you can trip the system up and come down too hard and still trigger the crash, but it's not at all like it was before. So things work so much better. And here's a massive lag out. CPU usage 2%, GPU usage 0%. You can hear the thrust, so I'm flying along. All I did was take a screenshot, and now if you look at some of the textures of these boulders, you can see the pixelation, and it looks like I mentioned with the laser, where they're not sharp, they're kind of animated, like an animated GIF on the rock. And I mentioned the angle of attack earlier. You can see that as I'm flying along here, my ship doesn't actually try to orient itself at the ground. I try to fly along an invisible plane in the same direction, and the maglevs will thrust me up and down to get around that. I should be slightly aimed up the hill here to flow along the surface of the ground. I know it's not going to be perfect, but if I hit a big hill like this mountain that I'm flying to up here, which is the one I drove my rover up, I should expect my ship to kind of aim up the hill. It doesn't quite work that way, as you'll see when I get to it. Pop up, pop up, pop up, pop up. Oh, didn't quite catch that one. Let's get back inside. There we go. Knocked me way high, and I'm going to start to fall here in a second. And there it goes. I'm starting to come down. I'm going to hit hard. There we go. So it brought me down nice and slow, which is good. So the system does a lot of things right. And this feels so much better than previously, where you're just slamming into everything, constantly having to maneuver around. And you can see that it detected I wouldn't actually hit that object, so it didn't try to send me up and over.
Port impact warning.
This is also the reason why I am not going to try and park it inside my ship.
Front impact
So here I am coming at the mountain's front here, and you can see my ship should be oriented to try and fly up the mountain at the moment, but instead I'm still stuck along that invisible plane, and it just looks goofy as all get out. Looks like I got a Jurassic Park headlight here. Whoa, off the top, freaked the system out. Alright, now what I'm going to do is kick in the afterburners to switch my flight mode to SEM. You can now see regular thrust speed is kicking in. The ship is fast. 255 meters per second across the surface, and I'm not even using my afterburners. So I am being critical of the system, but the fixes and the work they did on it really makes hover mode awesome. It just needs a few minor adjustments to get better and better, but hover mode is fantastic. You feel like you're actually driving a bike now, and I'm hopeful they'll dial the speed up a little more. I know you shouldn't be able to go 255 meters across the surface, but I would like to hit 100, maybe 150, especially for the Nox and some of the faster ones. But now that I'm back in SCM mode, you can see exactly what I mentioned the other day, where I lagged out on my bike, and this didn't happen until we jumped off the surface, where we tried to change back into a different area. So GPU is frozen at 14%, CPU is frozen at 37%. And we're just waiting for the system to wake up again. Now, because I'm angled in a specific way, hopefully it won't kill me. So CPU just came back at 100%, all threads, all cores maxed out, GPU at 20%. That's not right. I'd love, absolutely love to go exploring in this now, because it's a viable exploration ship. See, I've driven 14.5 kilometers away from my ship back at the hydro farm. Now, the problem is if some jerk decides to show up and blow my ship up, I'm stranded, but that's okay. That's why I brought a ship I don't care about, and everything's kind of messed up as it is, so you have to deal with it. Let's kick in the afterburner here and see how fast we can get rolling. Alright, let's come outside of my ship. That's just pretty cool. This time the screenshot didn't choke my system. Bit of tearing as you come around the render area in the scanning zone, so you can see the box that it's looking at below it. I believe that's what it is, or it's just the render area. Seen those before, that's nothing new. It is something they'll work on and they'll fix. That's okay, I'm not concerned. Let's get it out here so I can actually fly this thing. Alright, let's get back in because we've come around the planet and now we're angled up. Alright, let's go this way. Now, you may still be able to break orbit on some of these planets with this thing, and that's fine. I mentioned previously, I really don't think this should be able to break orbit except on the low-grav planets, and Ceylan's low enough gravity that it might be doable. I don't know. I can get a pretty hefty amount of speed, and with the lack of mass and momentum, I don't think gravity would have a huge impact on this ship. But some of the changes, like if I go to Daymar, where there is normal gravity, some folks are having issues getting their reclaimers on and off the surface because gravity's impact on it is so great that the thrusters can't compensate. You can do it, but you really have to utilize your ship's thrusters, your main engines, and everything to slow the ship down. You have to make a long, slow approach. You can't just drop out of orbit onto the surface, which I agree with, you shouldn't be able to, but the ship is a surface ship. It is touted as being able to land on the surface and reclaim things. So the fact that you can't really do that is a little bit startling. Again, you can, it just takes forever to get down there. Look at that, 1,100 meters a second. Just beautifully fast. I've already come around enough of the planet to screw with my orbits. My angles come around. That's why these bikes are going to be fun and viable to getting in and out of small areas. So let's hit X. And let's turn this way a bit. Oh, I'm going to red out. There it goes. Passed out. And I didn't even turn that hard. There we go, I'm back. I'm 109 kilometers from the hydro farm. I lost my ship. It's no longer my HUD, so hopefully it's not actually gone. It's just out of range for me to know, but I should know where my ship is. So I'm wondering if it despawned after 5 minutes because I was too close to the pad, which is not supposed to happen. You should never despawn my ship unless I'm landed on a pad. Huge pet peeve of mine, which means I'm stranded, but that's fine. So these bikes are just going to be a blast, but right now the only way to get them going real fast is to pop up here into SEM mode. Now, a lot of people have discussed that maybe you shouldn't have an SEM mode, and I think you should, but in my way of saying it is the higher you go above the surface, the slower your speed is because the maglevs have to work harder to keep you up there. So maybe up here you can't go 1100 in speed, or maybe with SCM on the surface of a planet, gravity keeps you down unless it's like Delamar, where Levski is, because that's just an asteroid. You should be able to completely fly around that in any way you want because it's so small. But something like Selene and Daymar and these bigger planets, I really don't think you should be able to completely fly it like a normal ship. It's a space bike. Now, I don't know. This is a lot of fun. I'm not going to knock this, and I wouldn't be adverse to keeping it in this particular way because this is a ton of fun cruising around here. It just doesn't seem realistic for a bike. Oh man, this flight control system is nuts. Jeez. But again, it is a spaceship. I see where they're going with it, and I'm not going to knock it if this is how it is for the rest of the game because this is fun. But I'd like to be able to go a lot faster, closer to the surface, and maybe switch it into an SCM mode where you do pop up a little bit and you're using more your back thruster to keep you airborne instead of just the maglevs. Lag out. There goes my FPS back down the toilet. We just rendered in a couple new mountains. CPU, GPU aren't really getting utilized. I am surprised that the memory off the GPU is still at 81%. I'm wondering if there's a memory leak somewhere in there, as we know they've had previously. Don't red out when you're aimed at the surface. Oh, see, I'm bipping and bopping because that flight control is so sensitive that just the slightest movement and you completely lose control of your ship. It's terrible. Nice impact crater that would be fun to explore. Places where the prospector would be fun to come in, and that'd be another good reason to bring this out. Cool to find a planet with active volcanoes on it. Alright, so we are coming up on the factory, so I'm going to let my ship slow down a bit here. And I am going to come close enough to the surface where it should switch me back into hover mode.
Front impact warning.
See if it'll do it. I don't need pre-flight. There we go. Now we're in hover mode again.
Impact warning.
Just have to get close enough to the surface and slow down enough that it'll switch flight modes for you.
Impact warning.
So now I'm back to racing across the surface on my pod racer, essentially, from Star Wars.
Warning.
Aside from the idiot computer saying, everything's an impact warning. It's a lot of fun. I feel like I'm actually on a bike now cruising across the surface. Transport beacon detected. Port Olazar. No thanks. So somewhere up there over that hill, I believe, is where I will find my destination. Yep, 7,000 meters out and closing. Now, you do have a bit of afterburner speed in this mode, but as you can see, it makes it really dangerous because the system doesn't pick up as fast that you're shooting across the surface. So it doesn't have the chance to change the hover system to lift you up quite as well. Whew, we cut that close. And then if I fly hard enough here, I'll switch over to SCM mode, and I really don't want to do that. So we're going to come back down. You heard me fire the afterburner again, and you can see I'm getting a lot closer to the surface. This is where I think it should automatically just lift me up a little bit higher because of the speed I'm traveling. And it shouldn't be able to keep me as close to the surface. Woohoo! That's exactly what I mean. So the system that scans ahead and tries to adjust the ship doesn't really scan far enough ahead. So when you're cruising at these speeds, you kind of have to do your own pop-up, which I just did on my own. So I'm going to take control of handling that, and I'm going to fly at this big rock right here. We'll start the pop-up now. Bad time for lag. Bad time for lag. Please don't blow up. Cutting throttle. Alright, let's throttle up so the system tries to move. Give me the ability to lift. Okay, that was unpleasant. Still is unpleasant. I don't know how I didn't blow up. Cursed performance, and now I'm back up to 30 FPS. Thanks. See, that one popped me up nicely. My ship's gone, though, so I'm kind of stranded here, which is unfortunate. I don't really have much I can do because of that, but we can pop off. Let's fire SCM mode now. And just for the sheer fun of it, let's rocket away. Since it doesn't really matter, I'm totally blown out of the orbit. Let's come back down now. Not that fast, you'll red out. No blackout. Oh my gosh. Alright, so now we're up here having a little cruise. So there's the shelter over there. Gillette Family Farms. These places aren't right here, but you guys are all on the other side of the planet. I need to find something that's closer to me. And there should be something else on this part of the planet. I guess there's not. I really thought there was something else over here. Alright, well, that's kind of what you get with the hovering and the SCM and all that stuff, so I'm going to come back down. We'll see what happens. You can see how jittery the ship is, and I have my sensitivity turned down to 70% of where it normally is. It starts at 100. I've dropped it down to 70 so I can at least control. If I take it too much, then I can't actually fight and maneuver my reticle around in a smooth way. But because the ship is so boom, 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 because of the way they changed the thruster setup, it's really brutal. Alright, there's the hydrofarm glitching in. We're going to try to do a bit of a landing here. Switch me over to hover mode. There we go. A little tap of the downward angle. I'm back in hover mode. You can see that angle of attack issue I mentioned.
Front impact warning.
Alright, we're going to come around, land this on the pad so at least something is despawned in the proper place.
Impact warning.
You can smooth out your maneuvers a decent amount, but
Impact warning.
alright, so I'm in hover mode. I've throttled down so my ship settles down. I can't really switch into PRE mode, but that's alright. Let's power this guy off. Thunk. Alright, so we've landed on the ground now. Which is how it's supposed to spawn. But that's a fun ship. That's really awesome. That guy wants to fight somebody. I'd love to come out there and help you, but I don't have a ship that works. Other ships go away, my performance isn't with it. But I love this ship. It's awesome. You have some saddlebags for some cargo. Where's the rear seat? Okay, everything got turned around and broken. Okay, so inner thought's now broken again, where I'm stuck in inner thought. You can see I'm... How the heck did I do that? How did I get stuck in inner thought? There's got to be a toggle or something for that. That is really aggravating. And it's going to make it very difficult to do anything. So let's jump in the passenger seat real quick, where you get to look backwards. If you have a gun, you can draw it. I apparently don't have even a pistol right now, which is fine. But as I'm now glitched and back stuck in inner thought, there's nothing I can do to fix it. So I am going to call it here. I'm going to let that ship despawn. 3.1.4 as I lag out. Performance, crap for me. Not for everybody, so your mileage may vary. Don't let my bad experience turn you off from giving a shot. Give it a try, see how it is for you. For me, though, performance is terrible. I don't like the flight control changes. I think they're terrible. They ruined the way the ships handle in space. Maybe they could add a slider that dials in the impact of it. So for those who really don't like the drifting and don't want to use full controls, such as the lateral movement, the strafing movements, the dorsal movements, all that stuff, fine, let them have the regular flight mode like IFCS now. Otherwise, for those of us who do want that more honed in and manual experience, let us do it. I don't see the reason why you can't have both. Flying around on the hover system now is a lot of fun. Just a few tweaks, and I think it'll be a great system. I am going to try to see what the latest driver does. I don't usually update to the latest drivers immediately because there's always some bugs and inconsistency issues that I find where, say, PUBG doesn't work right. I get FPS drops in other games, and I try not to grab it as soon as they release. But we'll see. Since it's been out, I think 5-6 days at this point, we'll give it a shot. And I'll keep trying. If this version is terrible, though, I will have to do what I did with 3.0.1, which is just not play it. Performance was so bad in that I really couldn't do anything, and it made it impossible for me to play and have any fun in the system because it just didn't work. So if that's what's going to happen here, then it's going to be very difficult for me to actually do anything and be able to give you a proper experience. So I thank you guys for watching. Hey, wait a minute. Nope, inner thought's still broken. I thank you guys for watching. It's been pretty fun for a lot of this stuff. We'll see what happens, and we will see you next time.